All right, hello and welcome to the Big Red Arrow Club. My name's Andy from the Rasterai YouTube channel, and despite this being my first appearance on this channel, I've gone mad with power and arrogantly demanded to host this discussion. Joining me this evening are three esteemed members of the retro computing YouTube sphere, who you're probably much more familiar with than me, to be honest. So everybody say hi. I've got Matt from Polymat.
Hey, everybody.
I've got HDE from HDE.
Hello.
And last but not least, we've got Lee from MoreFunMakingIt.
Least but more Lee. It's me. Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about audio, which I think is something that even massive YouTubers would kind of admit to glossing over a lot of the time. Like, I'm sure we must all have seen videos with millions of views where you're constantly having to turn the volume up and down just to be able to hear what they're saying. So hopefully we can try and move people past that. But yeah, like everything else, your approach to audio is going to depend on the type of video that you're making. There's not like a single correct process. There's a million different ways you can get good results. And like, to be honest, as long as your voice can be heard clearly, then that's the important thing. But yeah, everybody obviously has their own process. So before I get started properly, just like to ask our panelists what their current overall approach, like a TLDR version, is, like how long you spend on your audio, what do you think you're good at, what could use improvement, that kind of thing. I can already see HDA begging to get started there. So yeah, just we'll try to take the whole hour. Go for it, mate.
Oh my goodness, I have no idea why I'm here because I do not know what I'm doing.
Well, hey, we're all just learning, you know.
My approach to audio has been a source of continual frustration throughout the course of the last couple of years. Because just for the benefit of anyone watching this who doesn't know, I used to run a gaming focused channel on YouTube, which was nice and easy because I just used to process my own voice. The hardest thing I had to do was mix my voice against like game audio. I'm currently now running and producing a tabletop role-playing game show called Doom Colonist, which has got a tiny bit of content over on Twitch, and there's a little bit of content on YouTube. And for that, I'm processing audio for sometimes as much as 5 different people, and it is a nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's probably as much as I should say about it for now.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's good. All right, maybe Lee next. What's your overall approach to audio, and what do you think you could do better, and what do you think you're good at?
Well, I've been at this for a couple of years now, 2 or 3 years now, and at the start, like anybody, as I would actually recommend to anybody, is just use what you've got, you know. And it was just phones and that kind of thing. And as I expanded into my YouTube journey, I wanted to make things better, and you try to improve little things. There's no point in the biggest danger, and one thing I would say to anybody starting out is don't try to get it right at the start, because if you try to get it right at the start, you'll end up going out and spending thousands of pounds on equipment and then just not knowing what to do with it. It's really difficult. It's much better to learn with the basic stuff. Anyway, so I started with phones, and the next thing I wanted to do was improve my audio, because phones were really good for video, but the audio wasn't great. And I used to use, for my voiceover, a Blue Yeti mic, which was great. But because I decided to be on camera, I had to keep moving microphones around the workshop, and it was a pain. Yeah. It was great audio, and I'm still trying to match that level of quality audio even now with, you know, more mobile mics. But it was just, you know, there's always a compromise between portability and convenience and quality, because, you know, unless you're spending a lot of money, you're not going to get good quality from a small microphone. But nowadays, I'm happy with my setup. We'll probably delve into that a bit deeper later, but I'm happy with my setup, and my process is basically nailed down in terms of when I get to a point in editing, I know what I'm doing. I know which bits to run through Fairlight in DaVinci Resolve, and how to do it. And it's just a simple process I don't have to think about anymore. I'm pretty happy with how it stands. I don't think, without spending a serious amount of more money, I have spent a serious amount of money, but without spending a serious amount more money, I don't think I could improve it beyond like the 98% I reckon I'm getting at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. I've also thought your videos sound great. So yeah, it's certainly pretty successful. And finally, Matt, what's your process like?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's actually changed quite a bit over time, because when I first started about a little over a year ago, I kind of took the approach to do like no audio, essentially. I mean, it was, I put in some background music. There was no voiceover. There was no intros, right? Like if you watch a couple of my first videos, it was just music. And so the only thing I had to do was get like the music level right. And that was
peak Matt.
That was peak Matt. Exactly. And actually, Lee, you've regressed to peak Matt, because in your latest video, it's just you, which is, I love the video, by the way. But no, and so it's, over time, I've like, well, like I actually kind of, I used to do subtitles, and then I'm like, this isn't getting it. So I wanted to start doing voiceover. And then so in voiceover, I invested in this thing, which is my Elgato Wave 3, which I think is a solid mic. I don't know microphones. I just kind of went out and read reviews and thought what people were, they were liking, what they weren't. And then, and we'll get into this when we start talking about hardware. I've kind of added from there too, right? And so, I've got, it's so much more complex now, because it's the background. Do I actually use, do I try to do some of like the actual audio of when I'm actually working on the workbench and the things themselves. And then it's my intros, which is from a different source. And then it's my voiceover, which is from a different source. And so kind of getting all that right, honestly, has kind of been a struggle, because to me, right, I listen to my videos and I'm just like, yeah, like the intro when I'm at my desk, like doing my thing, and then coming back when I'm doing the VO sounds very different to me. And I'm struggling to try to figure out how to make that match better without taking this mic and trying to figure out how to do whatever it is over at the desk. So that's kind of an overview of my setup and my issues.
Yeah. Well, certainly like matching different types of mics together is something I definitely want to talk about later. Cause that's, like you said, that's often the biggest challenge when you're sort of mixing different microphones and all that kind of stuff. So, no, definitely. I think we should discuss that later.
I played into that. I had, some of my, not my earliest stuff, but some of the early repair stuff. I'd record myself talking to myself at the workbench while I was doing the repair. And then because the microphone that I did the voiceover with was so different, it did sound like two distinct voices. So I used that as a key thing. And people would still refer to this day to, future Lee and past Lee, having, like fights. That guy's a dick, though. Anyway.
Yeah. No, to be honest, though, it's not necessarily a bad thing, I think, to have a different sound on like different locations. Like, especially if you're doing like a voiceover where you're not visible on screen, then often it can be advantageous to be right up close to the mic with no room audio whatsoever. But if you can see yourself on camera or, that kind of thing, then it kind of sounds a bit weird if there's not some of the room in it.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, because you want an ambience in the recorded sound that matches what's on screen.
Yeah, precisely. That's it. I mean, it just otherwise it's just a kind of disembodied audio, which just sounds a bit strange. But no, that's good. Thanks for the contributions. I suppose I should talk about my own process a little bit. I very much come from a kind of like recording music production world, because I worked for years as like a audio repair tech and also did bits of recording and stuff like that. So like my videos are very much designed around my voiceover. Like I'll write a script, I'll record the voiceover, I'll chop up the voiceover into bits, and then I'll edit the video around that. So audio, I suppose, I don't know if that's unusual, is sort of like almost the most important thing to me, I suppose, just because it's kind of what I know.
I've watched quite a few of your videos, Andy, and I always thought that your voiceover was something that I aspired to.
Oh, well, that's very nice of you to say.
It's of that quality. Do you know, it's weird, but because without being trying to be insulting, I don't think it's like premium broadcast quality sound.
No.
But I think you've modeled it in a way that it works on a broad range of devices. And this is something else we'll probably get into as well.
Yeah.
It works on, I watch most of my YouTube on a crappy little Google Nest screen, and it's not got the best speaker on it. It's not like watching it on a TV. In fact, when I watch my own stuff on TV, sometimes I think, bit bassy. But when I watch anything on that, it's fine. You can just
know why that happens. Yeah.
Do enlighten us.
Something that I've known for years is that there's a massive difference between mixing audio on headphones and mixing over speakers.
Absolutely.
And excuse me, this has actually been an issue that's caused a lot of inconvenience for what we're doing with Doom Colonist, and it's put me to a lot of expense because like if you know your audio equipment, you know that not all headphones are made equal. And even when you're talking about outboard audio speakers for mixing purposes, the £20 USB speakers that you buy in Argos are not going to cut it. I'm actually at the moment, even though it was a couple of months ago since I bought them, I'm still furious over a set of, I think it was PreSonus monitor speakers, which I bought on the understanding that they would be completely neutral, and they're not. And that's the thing that you got to look for. The problem that you mentioned, Lee, with like bassy sound, particularly in vocals, is usually like a headphone thing. So I don't know if you mix on headphones.
No, that's actually, I was going to pull you up a little bit on this.
Okay, all right, no.
I slightly disagree because one of the things that I was having problems with was I was mixing everything with monitor headphones, which give you a lovely flat sound and give you an ideal soundscape. But that's not how most people are going to listen to it. Most people are going to listen to it on their phone or on a pair of earbuds, or it could be a tablet, or it could be absolutely anything, but it's not going to be monitor speakers. The way I do it now is I just have my desktop speakers with very low bass, but enough bass that I can hear if there is a problem. And I just mix on speakers. I don't bother. And just as a leveler, I have a video that I go to of somebody else's YouTube channel that I'm not going to mention, and I use them as a level, and I'll compare my audio to them. But I'm pretty good at nailing the actual level out there now.
That's a good way of doing things, because like if you've got a setup that you trust and you know that you can get decent results out of it, then it's the rule, as I understand it, is like if it sounds good, then it is good. What I was going to say to you there, like by way of a sort of a counterpoint to what you were saying, is that the thing of mixing on speakers, you should, in theory, get a better mix and a better sound quality if you use speakers than if you mix over headphones. The problem is, and it might be a thing, like I say, if we're going to have a discussion about hardware and equipment, it might be worth getting into more there. But it's surprising how much equipment is out there which is sold on the basis of being like flat frequency response, completely neutral, and it really isn't. I mean, like we'll come on to speaker as well. We might as well start on speakers now. It's like speakers, at least in most cases, they don't necessarily have to be completely flat. They just need to reproduce all frequencies at some level. Because the thing is, your room will change the way that speakers sound. Like the shape of the room, what's in it, that's going to affect that's going to make them not flat. Your ears themselves don't perceive things flat, but your brain is really good at flattening out, like listening to what's already there and kind of flattening it out already. So like, as you were saying, the most important thing is to listen to reference material, because that'll just kind of readjust your brain so that, you know what you're looking for. So like you said, just find a YouTuber that you particularly like the audio of. Not me. Like I said, I don't think I'm a professional grade, but, I would say like go for like
like channels that are actually sort of our professional audio mixers, like, like ones that actually work in a recording. Like I can give a couple of examples, like, White Sea Studio is pretty good. He reviews a lot of equipment. Just any of his videos, he's going to have mixed his audio quite well. And another one would be Dan Worrell from Dan Worrell Tutorials. He has a very sort of scientific approach to mixing, like might sort of excite a few people here, like the kind of nerdier types. And he's actually got a video like how I mix my voiceover chain. That's actually really, really great. He explains that you can basically, he kind of does it once with his really fancy, expensive mic and once with his little cheap dynamic mic, and he gets them both to sound really, really good. So I would recommend. I mean, like if you're interested in learning to mix a voiceover video, maybe don't watch us. Go and watch his video. I'll give a link to it.
Actually, that Lee made earlier about like use what you've got, don't go out and buy equipment. It's completely correct, because the thing that I learned very early on when I started making stuff for YouTube, and I've been getting a real crash course in it just lately, is that the sort of the science of actually processing sound that enables you, once you get a little bit good at it, you can take a really rough sounding sound source and make it sound 10 times better if you know what you're doing. I mean,
absolutely.
I say this as someone who's had a lot of false starts and a lot of going back to square one and starting from scratch, but it can be done.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask real quick is, like, what are we optimizing for? Right. And this kind of goes back to kind of Lee's point earlier, because I literally watched a video of somebody that, I'm trying to learn everything, right? I'm trying to learn how to do like, cinematography. I'm trying to learn audio. I'm trying to learn all of these things that kind of come into this hobby. And one of the videos, it was pretty good. The channel's name is Venus Theory, and
I know Venus Theory. Yeah, he's good.
And the video name was The Magic Shitbox. And it is him talking about how the best speaker that he has for mixing is an $8 Bluetooth speaker he found at like some just random, like,
I saw that video.
Yeah.
And to me it made a lot of sense, because like yes, and there are definitely things that you can do to audio to, like, for me, like I want to make the audio that I'm doing my VO sound the same as when I do my intros and things like that, because I have a specific style that I'm trying to, like, communicate. But when it comes to, right, the vast majority of people and what they're listening to our videos on, right, like how, like, what are we, comes back to my earlier question. What are we trying to optimize for?
Oh, so
the biggest audience.
Well, that's it. Yeah. The thing is, like, I mean, it's definitely a good idea to like check your mix on little crappy little speakers. Absolutely, that's a good idea. However, if you do your mixing actually on that, there's going to be some frequencies it just doesn't reproduce. And also little Bluetooth speakers, they tend to do things like harmonic, like saturation and stuff like that, where they kind of create the bass frequencies by having harmonics further up in the frequency range. So, I mean, the most important thing with speakers is really, they need to be able to reproduce all the frequencies without distortion, without affecting anything. Because if you mix well for a good pair of studio speakers, then you can be sure that they'll probably translate on other stuff. Like I said, check them on Bluetooth speakers. I mean, I'm actually going to make a recommendation for some speakers. There's a company called KRK that make a speaker range called the Rocket. And you can actually buy broken ones from like about 10 years ago for next to nothing. I think because they all have this design flaw where this black goop on the inside turns conductive. If you're willing to get one of these you can buy a pair for like 20 quid or something, clean out the insides, you got a pair of studio speakers that would originally cost like 400, 500 quid for next to nothing. So, I mean, if you're into repairing, it's an easy repair. It's a good shout.
Tip. I like that.
Yeah. And like, if you're into repairing stuff, it's a really good idea. So KRK Rocket speakers, like the RP6.
I prefer to buy things new. I don't like repairing things.
Get out. Not the channel for you. All right, but like you're saying, what you're optimizing for is just clarity on the widest range of devices. I mean, don't worry about it sounding good; just worry about it sounding clear. Really, you gotta, people got to be able to hear you.
That's the word that you've absolutely nailed it with that word is clarity, because There's nothing more frustrating than watching something with audio that you can't actually latch onto. And if you're not getting every single word, then you're going to switch off. You need that.
An issue that we have, or that I have with Doom Colonist, because to give folks an idea of what we do, if folks are remotely into the whole thing of tabletop role-playing games, there are things called actual play channels that you can watch on YouTube, where you can watch a party play a game, and they might go on for like 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours.
I thought you were going to say days then.
Days.
No.
I was sure it was going to be months. Like, I know people who've been running the same D&D campaign for like 20 years.
Yeah, sometimes during the process, it feels like days. Like, we came to the conclusion, slightly off topic, like anything longer than 2 hours is probably too much to ask of people. But the thing is, like, even then you're talking about a tremendous amount of audio that needs to be processed. And there's the thing as well with YouTube channels, like everyone says, like, it helps a YouTube channel if you have a unique selling point. Now, we don't do anything that is not being done by anybody else. But what we do, I just said do. What we do is we try to build a more cinematic approach to those games. And if anyone wants an example of what that's like in a rough and ready form, over on my Twitch channel, we've got 6 episodes of an Alien role-playing game campaign, where it needs to be redone and polished up for YouTube, because the problem is muddy vocals. But the issue there is it's layered with sound effects, ambient noise for everything. It's edited as well, so you don't have any long extended periods where we get bogged down in stuff that's not fun to watch. I say hopefully. But the big deal is there are a lot of audio elements. We have sometimes spot music. There's intro and outro music. We have like spot sound effects, tension music, sometimes that kind of thing. And most of it is homegrown.
Excellent.
A lot of the sound effects.
And this is edited afterwards, yeah?
Yeah.
This isn't you don't have a big soundboard as you're playing. No?
Yeah, we record it, and like I got to say props to everyone who actually plays in the streams. I will be sitting there saying, like, you walk down a dark corridor in the colony, you can hear acid sizzling on the floors, and the players are like, yeah. Once you layer that with John Carpenter synthesizers and screeching aliens and lightning storms, all this stuff, it is really fun to make, but it is an absolute bastard to edit.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. I would hate to be doing that.
I love it. I love it because it's the thing of raw editing video for me. But the thing that Lee says about clarity of audio, that is the continual struggle, because you're trying to make sure that none of those elements are competing and nothing is getting muddied in the mix. And that's a real challenge. It's the hardest audio exercise I think I've ever had. And I've been fiddling about with audio since I was, 22?
Can I just ask, there's 2 things I want to ask. One is AI. Have you had a dabble with AI to lift the audio out of these things?
Absolutely not. No. If there was a magic button that I could press that would just magically clean everything up, I'd be all for that. But
so I'm often singing the praises of DaVinci Resolve, and I have to say that the Fairlight Studio, the audio part of DaVinci Resolve, is basically magic. It's the way it works with certain things. It's a hyper powerful suite of software that I don't even know 5% of how it works, but there are certain things in it, like the ability to lift soft audio out of background in a way that just seems like witchcraft to me.
That's maybe a good opportunity to get going on DAWs. Like, what are we using DAW wise? HDE. You're on Reaper, aren't you?
I am indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you finding it?
I love it. I love it because I got Reaper a few years back when I started getting back into a little bit of music production, and it was the first time I'd ever actually had a serious sit down and tinker with like music production software.
Yeah, for sure.
It gets used mainly for the stuff we're doing now to arrange things like pad synthesizers and things, because it's got all the nice MIDI editing functions and everything. But I like Reaper because it's a very easy thing to just pick up, and it intuitively does what you need it to do. It's very, very simple to use. It's
There's a free trial as well. You just download it and you get the whole thing free. And you should register it after a while, to be honest.
Yeah. Great built-in effects as well.
I'm on Reaper as well. I really like it. I mean, I don't use all the built-in effects necessarily. I tend to add extra plugins and stuff like that. But yeah, it's great. Just like as a DAW for just loading your audio in, chopping it up into bits, and then just doing whatever you need. I mean, I tend to record in Reaper, then export into Premiere, then export back to Reaper again for the final mix. Add music and stuff like that. But Reaper's really good. Matt, what are you using audio? Why?
So I'm using DaVinci Resolve 2, and so I've just started to get into. I know, Lee, I'm a convert too, because when I started out, the same use what you have type thing. I had Final Cut, right? And I know that I'm not sure if Final Cut actually has any specific kind of like DAW or like maybe they've got just audio tools. But I think
you're just meant to use Logic,
Yeah, the good point. But I'll be honest, even in DaVinci, right? Like I rarely find myself in the Fairlight tab unless I'm doing VO.
Really?
Right? And even then the VO tools are a little wonky in Fairlight. But so I'm usually just in the timeline, and I'm not sure if it's using Fairlight functionality, but I'm really just in the timeline, background noise removal, voice isolation, kind of like those kinds of things. There's a little bit of EQ functionality in the timeline, but I don't know enough in order to know what I'm doing in Fairlight.
That's interesting because like when Andy was asking like what DAW I use, Reaper's used for all the music and sound effects and everything, but I do all the vocal processing in Fairlight.
All right, so that's 3 Fairlight users we got.
Yeah,
excellent. Just to be clear, just for the benefit of people who haven't used it, like Fairlight's like a sort of DAW that's built into DaVinci Resolve that basically has all the functions of any other audio editor, but just already in your timeline.
Yeah, it used to be a separate standalone piece of software, and then it was the same with Fusion. So DaVinci Resolve has the NLE editor part of it, and then it has the color
color grading,
color grading section, and then it has the Fairlight, it was the audio section. They all used to be separate pieces of software, and then they all got mushed into DaVinci Resolve.
I really like that approach, to be honest. Like the fact that you can just like jump straight from your timeline view to a multi-track audio editor. I think that's a really cool feature. I'm
being able
going to have to look at it more.
Backwards and forwards as well. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea. Like, because I currently export from Premiere into Reaper, and it's all just a bit of a pain. So yeah,
DaVinci Resolve I find is great for the actual editing of like podcast style audio, just in the sense that you can see it all visually and you can chop it and change it around. I get a lot of mileage out of that because one of the things I do with our recorded sessions is, if you ever watch live roundtable internet discussion type content, you quite often you'll find that you've got people they'll be going through the discussion, and then you get lots of and then and it's very, very easy to find that stuff in
you
Resolve.
Learn what it looks like.
You do, and you just zip it out.
Coughs.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, you would be amazed how many of those ums and ahs and all those kind of like sub vocal sounds, how many of those things are not even visible like on camera. Yeah. So you whip them out and you would not know that they were there. It's absolutely seamless.
People can make annoying noises without even moving their lips. Yeah,
yeah.
I can. Yeah.
Before my YouTube days, I used to be a host on a podcast called Ready Player 2, which was a gaming podcast, and I got roped into being the editor for a while because nobody wanted to do it, and I became one of these editors that would take out every single breath noise and every tiny little and and they honestly the podcasts are some of the best things I've ever produced because they sounded perfect. They were brilliant, all edited in Audacity, which I'm surprised nobody's used here or uses now.
No. I do use it, but not for mixing generally,
but I would, a 2-hour podcast would take me a good 20 hours to edit. It was absolutely ridiculous amount. And it burnt me out in the end. It was one of those things that you just shouldn't do. Well, I think just leave them in because that's part of speech. And you don't, every now and then you'll come across somebody who has an and an or a voice of affectation that will hit your ear wrong, but it's only you. And most people won't even hear them because you just don't. It's not something you're programmed to actually hear.
It depends as well. I think
unless it's excessive.
You learn as you do that stuff, you learn what the most egregious kind of sound out effects are. Like, I watched an interview with a famous, like documentary producer a while back, and he was saying where you have all those like breath sounds and everything, he was saying there is a case for maybe not cutting them completely out, but lowering them, and that can actually contribute a bit of mood, which is quite interesting. I'm of the school of thought, just take it out, just get it out there.
Because it depends on the material, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel it's sort of we're doing. It detracts.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a voiceover. I think you should probably cut out all the little ums and ahs, and well, definitely. But like
unless
if you're actually
scripting them in.
Yeah. I have to confess, I've done that a couple of times. Remember to go here. But yeah, if you're actually hosting a conversation or even like doing a bit to camera sometimes, then you're often better leaving that in. But it's one of these things you just kind of get the hang of it. Listen,
there's certain things you find like you can't leave them in. Like I mean, the things like you mentioned are one thing, but I mean, I've had a thing early on as I was getting to grips with all the kind of EQ settings for Doom Colonist. There'd be parts where I would be delivering scene setting narration for the players, which is just parcel of the thing.
Of course. Yeah.
And I've actually been on medication for a while now for reflux. And one of the things I was noticing in my
all the old men are nodding now.
So omeprazole, I'm guessing, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've got it down to now. I just need one tablet every 2 weeks, so it's like it's a fixable thing. But
it's pretty good.
The thing was, like, I would be going through things like you draw close to the gate of Hadley's Hope, and you can see that something is wrong with the colony. All the running lights are switched off. There is an acrid acidic stench in the air, and then you hear. And you think, oh.
Well, there's your acrid acidic stench.
It's just getting into character, bit of method acting.
Yeah.
I mean, I also think that like as we go, we naturally just get better at speaking, right?
Yeah.
Like either reading scripts or off the cuff or everything like that.
Well, yeah. So I think that's something I kind of wanted to move on to, was sort of like, like vocal technique, that kind of thing. So yeah. By all means, Matt, what sort of, have you done anything to kind of practice your speaking, or do you do like warm up exercises, that kind of stuff?
I mean, in my job, I have to give a lot of presentations. I have to do public speaking or speaking in front of large audiences. And so it's part of my day-to-day routine to scrutinize and go back and look at all of the recordings that I've made. And then like, ooh, yeah, that was rough. Or I didn't realize I said so many, like I've got an counter, right? And I think that like, on one of my previous ones that I've done recently, I'm just like, ooh, that was 3 ums in an hour. That's good, but not great. Like I need to get that down. Right. And so but I think it's just, I don't know if anybody else goes back and rewatches their videos. I do all the time. I rewatch for things that I can, because for me, the part of this hobby is just getting better at things, right? Getting better at all of it. And it's improving one thing every time. And so I constantly go back and think to myself, like, ooh, that I could do this better, like that, like I could do these transitions a little bit better, or my, like again, scrutinizing my audio of this really doesn't match this. It kind of breaks the mood, or it breaks this part. And so, I go back, 100%. Rewatch and scrutinize.
Yeah, Can I ask, Matt? Yeah. Can I ask, have you ever gone back and looked at something and thought, oh crap, I'm actually worse now?
There have been times when
you can just say no.
Parts of it. No. There have absolutely been, like, I haven't gone back at a video, like a video, and said, well, that video was overall shittier than the last one, right? Or shittier than now. I have enjoyed videos less, right? And maybe it's just the subject matter, the content, or but I tend to take a critical look at the cinematography, like how I do things and how, like, my camera angles, and like, is my arm just sticking in front of the camera while I'm soldering or repairing something? And so there are elements where I'm like, yeah, I did that way better in this video than I did in this one. But overall, I'm pretty comfortable that I think I feel that I'm getting better every time, and my videos as a whole are getting better over time. I don't know if my audience thinks that, because they have their own opinions, but I do.
Yeah. I mean, I generally find I can't stand to listen to one of my, like, by the time I'm done editing a video, I'm so sick of the sound of my own voice that I cannot listen to that video again for like at least a month or two. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it is worth going back and kind of going, all right, how does that compare to my current videos? How does it compare to other people's voiceovers? Listen to your stuff next to other stuff, kind of go, okay, well, that could be a bit louder. Maybe I could move this about a bit, and that kind of thing. What about you, Lee? Have you gotten better at speaking, or do you do any vocal warm-ups, that kind of thing, or what do you think?
No, I just I never shut up. That's always an advantage.
You're never not warmed up.
Plenty of practice speaking normally, yeah.
The first time I had to do public speaking was I was training to be, or I was on a course to become a tennis coach for the LTA. And part of that was to do a presentation in front of people, and I absolutely shit myself because I was pulling myself apart, thinking I'm going to be and I'm not know what to say. But I think part of my your journey through life is you take all of your experiences from different things, and I used to work behind a bar, so for a long time when my family owned a pub. So I'm happy to talk to people that, and on any subject, I'm quite happy to just waffle on. I'm doing it now. And,
even about audio. Yeah.
Yeah. But the other thing is, talking on camera is, similar to talking in front of people, not the same, but being a tennis coach was something that helped me, because I felt that I could project. Because I'd done it so much, being the person that everybody's, you've got a group of 20 people on 3 tennis courts, and they're all staring at you waiting for instruction, and you have to be able to give that instruction clearly. And that's always helped me. So I was all right getting into it. But if you look, I've gone back and looked at, and listened to some of my early stuff, and there is a marked difference between the way I speak now and the way I spoke then. I think, and I was for a long time getting hung up on ums and ahs, but I feel that I've got through that now. I'm kind of conscious of it sometimes, but I don't worry about it. So most of my stuff is scripted anyway, so it's not a big problem.
If I can chime in on that one real quick, I think that one of the things that I learned, and I can't remember, I have a friend who does like she's on television, and she's like a sports anchor, and she told me once that, like, look, those kind of vocal, like affectations or whatever you want to call them, are really like a combination of, one, you're trying to think of what to say next, and two, you think that you have to not break your chain, right? And so you come up with words. Exactly. And I think one of the most important things that she said is like if you can consciously know that you're doing that and tell yourself it's okay to stop, right? Like if you can't think of what to say next, pause. And there's even a dramatic kind of like effect that brings too. And
Absolutely.
so, rather than the ums or ah or whatever that is, if you allow yourself, if you constantly think about it, to just stop for a second, think about what to say next, and then continue, right? Like that's one of the things that for me really, really helped, because sure, I am guilty of ums and ahs coming out every once in a while here or there too. But I also think that technique kind of really, really helped.
Yeah, if you look at like professional, people whose job it is to speak, like, presumably you, then yeah, it doesn't make you sound like, slower or less control if you just have a pause. It just makes you sound more thoughtful. And I think that's what
exactly
people kind of go for. Although, like, politicians, apparently they teach them, rather than go omara, to say listen or something like that. It's like, blah, 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 listen. Sure. Now, listen, so maybe that's going too far the other way. I wouldn't
Hasn't that worked out well? Yeah.
Yeah. So what about you, HDE? How's you in terms of like your vocal technique and whatnot?
To be honest, it's not something I really think about too much.
That's probably a good thing, to be honest.
Well, very good thing.
Maybe it is and maybe it isn't. I mean, a point that I sort of had in mind listening to Matt and Lee talking about that is that I think for the whole YouTube thing, if you're creating content that's going out for public consumption, I think it's important that you do the thing of standing back and self-examining and making sure that you are your own toughest critic on the work that you produce. And I think most of the stuff I've identified as weaknesses in my own delivery and kind of stuff like that is all stuff that I learned as I was doing other things, because I think I started creating YouTube content in 2016. I was actually reviewing anime, and that is no longer sustainable on YouTube. It's like it's a content.
A lot of people's origin story, though. Reviewing anime.
It is, but
it's a good way to start.
That was like that was good training in that it made me think about how you structure like pre-written content for video content. And I look back on early videos there. In the end, I took them all offline because I was just thinking, like, copyright claims are going ridiculous on this stuff.
Oh yeah,
It's not worth the hassle. I was getting sick and tired of having like clueless kids come in and say, well, actually, you got this wrong because, and I'm like, dude,
yeah.
And the thing was, like, I look back on those old videos and like some of them, the voiceover quality was not great. Then I started doing video game content in a similar format, and I look back on some of those and I think, yeah, some of that is still not great. It's a bit stilted. I think it's not so much a problem for the format of Doom Colonist, because the format of that show is basically that I'm sitting down and I'm having a conversation with friends, and that's how those things work. And when you're in a situation like that, I think your delivery is just totally natural. You're riffing off of other people. I'm very fortunate that I've got people who are regulars on the show, like Dudley from Yesterzine, What Host Snorkers. Dudley. He's kind of a big deal. It's
him and James. Him and What Host Snorkers, lovely people.
Well. Yeah, they're great. They're great. The thing is, like, I'm fortunate that I get to do that with the people that I do, because they are experienced. They would probably be, I mean, them and Geigerpunk and Flothulu as well. They'd probably be the first people to say, well, but they really are good at what they do, which is basically just sitting in front of a camera and gabbing with each other.
Yeah. And that's the most important thing, isn't it? It's just you can speak, I mean, if you want to sound like somebody else on YouTube, you can't do that because you're not that person. You know, you have your own voice, and all you can do is kind of make it better. There's only so much processing you can do. You can't get an excellent voiceover performance out of a rubbish one just by, you know, messing with EQ or whatever. It's 99% performance.
Practice,
absolutely.
I was very fortunate, actually, in the time that I was writing about anime. I did get a chance to meet a couple of voice actors, like professional voice actors, quite prolific ones. I won't mention who because it might get me into trouble. But there was one guy that I actually had the privilege of doing a sit-down recorded interview with, and it'll never appear online because I could never pin the guy down for approval. But he actually, all through the course of the event that I pinned him down at, he was being approached by people, and they were saying, "Oh, could you do like a voicemail message for me? Could you record a thing for my podcast?" And he would just lean into whatever device was put in front of him, and he would flawlessly one take it. And I remember thinking, like, how do you do? But I got a chance to ask him, and he just said it's processes that you learn. Like, a lot of people think that the business of speaking into a microphone on camera, or into a microphone in a studio is just that. You sit there, you make yourself available, and you do it. And he said, no, there's training, there's things that you learn depending at what level you do it. There are different things that you can learn. You can really push it to a science.
Talented voice artists are amazing to what. Like they can have like 2 or 3 separate characters all arguing with each other at the same time. It's astonishing to watch a talented one work. It's just amazing.
Absolutely.
Should we maybe move on to like editing and mixing then? So I suppose, this is this is actually the one we kind of got the most requests to talk about. Because really? I suppose it's no, absolutely. So I think personally the most sort of important thing to learn is EQ. Because like with an EQ you can make one mic sound like another mic. You can take a sort of recording that, you know, is really boomy and, you know, bring down the bass, bring up the treble, and you can kind of do absolute miracles with it, basically. So I would say that EQ is probably the most important thing to kind of learn if you need to do one thing. But it can be kind of tricky. You might not be familiar with this particular one. This is Nova, but I mean it's going to look the same no matter what you're doing. You know, you've got a parametric EQ. You know, you've got your you can basically boost or cut certain frequencies, and it's just like, you know, the sort of graphic EQ you had on your 1980s cheapo Amstrad hi-fi or whatever. So down the low end, here's your bass. You know, you can boost or cut bass, just like boost or cut your treble over here and boost or cut your mids here. Like personally, my process is basically just I add a high pass filter at about 80 to 100 hertz. The high pass filter is absolutely crucial. You want a high pass filter because everything below about 80 hertz is just garbage, basically, unless you're recording a bass guitar or something. And
or your rose tinted Spectrum, where all of his voice is down there.
If you want it to sound more clear, like the sort of clarity area is up here at the top, really. So you want to, like, this is what's called a high shelf. It sort of boosts every frequency above a certain point. And yeah, that's kind of where the clarity part of your audio is. So you might want to put it about like sort of 5 kilohertz, maybe a bit higher or lower. But the important thing is to listen the whole time you're doing it. Like you want your audio to be playing through your EQ and listening to it the whole time, maybe flicking back and forward between your audio and somebody else's audio, just to kind of compare them. And the other thing I tend to do for a lot of sources is kind of cut around the sort of 300 hertz range, because if you're right up close to your microphone, you get a thing called proximity effect. So that tends to just naturally kind of boost this area anyway. So but again, listen to what you're doing, all that kind of stuff. Like it's good to just maybe just run your audio through it and just kind of boost all over the frequency spectrum, just so you can get a feel for what different parts of it sound like, you know, and then, you know, I don't like, in fact, Lee, you actually had a really good technique for kind of using a parametric EQ to kind of like first isolate bands that you don't like and cut them. Do you want to maybe just give us a talk through that? Just a TLDR version?
Can I give you the history of that first, actually?
Because, by all means. Yeah, go for it.
The thing was, I was trying to get, I bought not this wireless mic that I'm wearing now, a cheaper wireless mic, and I was trying to make it sound like my Yeti. So I was looking up guides on YouTube for how to make a microphone sound better in DaVinci Resolve Fairlight. And I came across this tutorial, and you know, if you search for a similar thing, this one would probably be near the top of the search results. And there was a series of processes that this guy went through, adding in different effects. And I followed along with my microphone. And what came out the other end was just hot garbage. It was horrible. And quite a few of my videos had that audio on from around that time, because I just couldn't get past the state that what he was doing wasn't working for me. And it's about working out what does work for you and using that. So I just cut out all of the things that made things sound worse, basically. One day I just sat down and I thought, okay, listen along, and added these things in. No, that sounds worse. I'm not going to use that. And so my process now is, and I might drop this, because I've got a video unlisted on my channel. I might actually drop this in here, or even leave it in the description for this video.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Of my process from start to finish, which only takes like less than 2 minutes. It's such a simple thing to do. But when I'm in EQ, I basically just drag up on that. On those little handles.
I'll maybe mime along with you. Yeah. So you'd normally sort of like make it a bit thinner, wouldn't you? And then
yeah. And then I'll drag it up as I'm listening. I'll drag it from side to side until I hear something I don't like, and then I'll leave it at that point and then drag it down below the line. Not too far, probably just like -4 or 5, something like that.
All right. It'll depend on what you're hearing. Yeah.
Exactly. But again, listening along the whole time. You've got to have your audio source listening in your ears the whole time as you do it.
That's very important. Like, I've seen a lot of people kind of, you know, they'll kind of apply an effect to the whole thing, listen to it and go, oh no, that's rubbish. Okay, undo, apply the effect to the whole thing. You know, you need to be listening to it as it goes along. Yeah.
And there's two things that are different for everybody that records. One is the environment you're in, and the other one is the voice that you're using, because none of us have got the same voice and none of us are sitting in the same room. So everybody's EQ will be different, and I think you need to find your own one. And the good thing is you can just make a preset. But I very rarely use a preset, because you move things around in your room. Your voice changes depending on the time of day and what you've had to drink. So I'll actually make a new EQ almost every single video.
Yeah, 100. Same with me. I mean, I will normally EQ it just each, because apart from anything else, I might be using 2 different microphones. You know, I mean, like I said, it's if you kind of like, if you want to make one microphone sound like another, is just like have the 2 instances separated, flick back and forward between them, and just kind of use this to try and find the frequencies that make it sound like the other one, and either boost or cut them. You know, like it's EQ is such a powerful tool for microphone matching. It's and also removing, like, often the room noise in your room, like your reverb, will only be at kind of one part of the frequency spectrum. So if you can just kind of cut that, you can de-reverb a room.
That point about de-reverbing a room, that's just really interesting, because it's what you've been doing there on screen is the process that I've been using for like the recorded vocal tracks for Doom Colonist, where one of the problems we have is that there's one room in the flat that I'm in that's suitable to recording. It's not acoustically treated. I don't have any sound treatment materials at all, and all that room reverb has to be taken out. And I learned that there is like a frequency range that you can sort of notch out to a certain level. And that does reliably clean things up a lot. But there's also a thing that I learned where towards the sort of like the lower end of the EQ and the lower mids, most people have got maybe 2 little frequencies around there, which I know some people call them the chest region, where you get a kind of a boomy resonance, and taking those out, that usually helps as well.
At least for me, that's normally about 300 hertz. Like, but again, it's going to be different for everybody. It's going to be different on different microphones, you know. So you just got to listen and experiment. You know, that's the most important thing, really.
Well, one of the things that resonated for me when Lee was talking is time of day. Like, I didn't realize it, and this is good because I didn't know how to fix it. But on my last video, if you listen to my intro, right, which I'm standing at my desk, I'm using like my little lav mic, and if you listen to that, it goes immediately from that into the voiceover of the project itself. And when I started that voiceover, I had just woken up, right? It was like 7 a.m. and my voice was noticeably like an octave deeper than the actual, than the actual, like the intro. And I was like, shit. And I had no idea what I was doing, but I tried to mess around and see if I could try to, but it's interesting because like I recorded the whole thing that day and you couldn't tell, but like if you listen to the beginning when I started and then the end of the video matched the tone of my voice, at the beginning, but like it was this like kind of like bassy thing that just slowly got better as the day went on. And I was just like, I have zero idea how to fix this.
When you need to, you forget to put something in a video and you've done the voiceover section, because I do it slightly different to how you said, Andy. I'll film a lot of the work. I'll then write a script, record the voiceover, and then edit them together.
Yeah.
But then once I've got that all, on the editing page, if I've forgotten to do something and I've forgotten to mention something, I've got two choices. I can either I can risk it and actually, what I'll actually do is set the exact same setup, put the microphone in the same place, stand in the same place, try and have the same things around me to record that bit again, rather than just sitting at the desk with the same microphone, because that's just not going to sound right. Or I can just put some words on the screen instead, which is the lazy YouTuber's way.
No, that's it. Stuff recorded in separate sessions almost always sounds different. Yeah. It's very, very difficult to get them to match.
I remember years and years ago, there was somebody I met who was touting for work as a singer, and they told me one of their rules, just to show you like the kind of things that can have an impact on all of this. One of her rules was she would not drink tea or coffee or any milky drinks for something like 6 hours before recording. And
wow,
her treat after a recording session, and like she was only like small time, her treat after a recording session was that she would go out and she would get a takeaway. And sometimes like she wouldn't even eat. And she explained, like, it's crazy. She explained to me that the science of that was that tea, coffee particularly, but milky drinks in general, they will leave deposits on the teeth. They bring out mouth sounds. Like food, fatty foods will do that as well. So cheesy things. Sometimes, I think there's a famous thing where people say eat green apples and that stops you from having mouth sounds. And I've known people who have said that they've done the green apple thing and their mouth sound is worse.
Really?
But the crazy thing was I was watching a video by Mark Buster from Classic Game Room, and he was talking about his process for recording vocals. And he said, well, the thing I do is I pound coffee all day. And I'm like, well, whatever works, so it shows
you're consistent.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know you can actually buy like what they call Vocaloid capsules, that are supposed to help stop mouth sounds and stuff like that. I've never tried them. Apparently they're pretty nasty tasting. So, I suppose compression. That's the other kind of big effect I would say is important for voiceovers. And can be very difficult to get it tuned correctly, to be honest. Now, compression, just for those who don't know, it's like an automatic volume control. It has a threshold where if you get above that threshold, it'll turn down the volume a little bit. And obviously that's useful because it means that if you move kind of closer and further away from the mic, then it will kind of fix that for you. But it's more than just that. It kind of also fattens out your voice. It makes it sound a bit like you're on, radio, something like that. It kind of like makes it sound a lot more kind of present, and it kind of makes it gel with your background audio quite a lot. But it is very difficult to overdo. So, what are our opinions on compressors?
I just have this very set way of doing it where I'll turn on, I think it's called a soft knee, isn't it? Compressor, and which just takes angles off the top of the
what it does is it means that like rather than there being one threshold, it means the threshold kind of engages slowly over the course of the thing. So it'll adjust the ratio so it starts at 0, and then as you cross the threshold, it gets higher. So it can make it sound more natural. Yeah, it's often a good idea. Yeah.
And again, going back to how my process before, I'll have the audio playing. I'll turn on that compressor. I'll actually add in a limiter that takes off the top 3 or 4 decibels completely.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
And then I just boost up the sound until I'm just about hitting the reds with normal vocal. And that's basically all I do. It's a very simple process for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you really need. I mean, like probably the most important parts are like sort of like setting the attack and the release and the exact threshold. Like you said, you probably want to be chopping off like maybe about 3 to 6 decibels. But like I'll maybe share my screen again if I can find it. Over here. So the other thing I like about TDR Nova is it's got a built-in compressor. So like one plugin gives you kind of everything you need. But for voiceovers, you probably want a ratio between like 3 and 4 down here. Your attack, you probably want like personally, I like a really fast attack, but most people would do between like 5 and 10.
You can be quick with
like
voiceover.
That. Yeah. Well, that's it. I sometimes pull it all the way down to minimum, to be honest, because I think it just makes it sound really fat. But again, it's one of these things. Experiment. Just listen to it, compare yourself to other voiceovers, and your release probably about 30 to 60, something like that. And then you just sort of like as you're playing, like you pull down the threshold until you're getting on this display. I don't know why I'm pointing at my screen, but this display, it'll show you how much gain reduction you're getting. That's what this kind of thing down here. And as you can see, as I'm sort of like getting about 6 to 12 decibels, which is probably about normal. But yeah, and you just listen to it, see what it sounds like, that kind of thing. That would be.
That's a really nice way of actually representing the audio. It's completely different to what I see in Fairlight, but I really like that.
I mean, all compressors will have a kind of gain reduction. I mean, that's all that this is. It's just the kind of gain reduction.
Yeah, it's just the way it's conveying the information. It's really nice.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's a really nice plugin. It's used by lots of people, but I don't know. Matt, do you use compressors much, or what's your things for setting them, or do you just not bother?
No, honestly, again, this is just a lack of knowledge on the whole thing, and so right, like I don't know what's happening in the background, but the presets that I use in order the kind of the automatic stuff that I can get through the timeline in DaVinci is really just it's kind of I turn up and down the volume, adjust, and so I'm not getting into the reds, but close. Mm-hmm. And then I also I don't know, but there is a normalization that I turn on when I export out of DaVinci, and specifically it is a normalized. It's called normalized to standard that I use, and it's only available on the YouTube one. So I'm not sure if there's specific things that YouTube has, but yeah, that's honestly like I tick that box and hope it goes well.
That's a really good point, actually. To normalize your audio is to even things out right across the board. So I select all the clips on my timeline and then normalize them to -2 decibels. The YouTube level is -1 decibels, I think. And I used to do that. I used to do it to the YouTube level, but for some reason, I don't know why, it might have been something else I was doing, I just wasn't having good audio. So I just went back to the -2, the standard -2 true peak normalization.
Just to kind of, for the clarification of viewers, like you said, normalization, what it does is it kind of just makes the maximum point in the clip all the way up to the top. So like theoretically, it should make all your clips sound about the same volume. The only thing to worry about is if you have like one of your clips has one tiny little loud noise in the middle of it, it can push the rest of its volume down. So often it's worth just going back over it and just kind of making sure, even if the waves look about the same size, just going back and manually adjusting any ones that look way quieter or way louder than the other. Because that way there's less work for the compressor to do. It means you can kind of set more conservative compressor settings, and it just means it will be more predictable. But yeah, just to kind of clarify some terminology. But HD, I sense your like really a bit to jump in.
Compression is a 4-letter word. So, I've always had a love-hate relationship with compressors, because when I started out, like the first time I ever did any messing around with compressors was as a musician. Used to use compressors to even out the dynamics on stringed instruments like electric guitars.
That's the cool thing about compressors is they can be a very musical tool as well. That's the thing. You can use them to like make stuff pump and kind of like make stuff sound ridiculously loud and stuff.
And great. Quite often in music production, you'll you'll have different compressor settings at different points in a piece of music to nail different effects.
Absolutely.
The thing the most important thing I think that's probably pertinent to this discussion that I can share from that is that I remember somebody years ago telling me that the correct way to use a compressor is so that the effect is invisible. Anyone listening to it shouldn't be able to sort of twig like there's something funky going on here.
Yeah.
I always used to use them for electric guitar because I used to love nice, clean, shimmery guitars, and I always
nice long sustain on it as well. Yeah,
yeah. And the trouble with doing that was that you would get individual notes that would be all different volumes. So having a tool that squishes everything into the same dynamic range is really useful. Then, you fast forward to the present, and I'm learning how to use compressors for vocal processing or voiceover processing, and it's a completely different discipline. You're using it to do a completely different thing. I mean, it sounds similar, but in practice, the way you do it's so different.
Yeah,
and it's murder for us, because it's one thing to compress one solitary audio track for a video, because you only have to satisfy the needs of that one track. When you've got, like we have, there'll be 4 or 5 individual tracks that all need to be balanced, and they all need to be bedded into a mix so that they don't sound horrible against each other. You then have to marry the concerns of having them sound good, which hopefully you've already taken care of with EQ and noise reduction and whatnot. But then you also have to make sure that they're all at comparable volume, because there's nothing worse than having a multi-speaker discussion where someone is low in the mix and someone is excessively loud.
Yeah.
And
well, that's why compressors are useful, because you can kind of get everyone up to the same level without having to sit there riding the volume the whole time.
Yeah. The thing I was going to mention off the back of Lee's point about you were saying, Lee, that you normalized to -2 decibels, and you were trying to hit YouTube's recommended settings. This has been like a dance that we've gone through recently, because YouTube, like a lot of streaming platforms, has its own recommended loudness setting, and they require you to hit a value of, I think it's -14 LUFS, LUFS, which is the standard of loudness measurement.
That's it, yeah.
There's loads of videos online where people say, if you're uploading to YouTube, you must have an overall volume of -14 LUFS. You must do this. There's people saying, no, if you're hitting like -20 LUFS, you need to sort yourself out. That is wrong. Seriously, I'm saying I wasted a month trying to hit YouTube loudness, like target loudness. And every time I did it, messing around with things like compressors and EQ, because these things sometimes have like a knock-on effect on each other, I was just coming up with an awful sounding video. So what I would say by way of general advice to anybody is like, it's okay to come in lower than that. I mean, I have a friend who does some voice acting work, and he tells me that the majority of his demo recordings are, I think they come in at something like -3 dB overall loudness, which is like, in comparison to YouTube's target loudness, that's -17 LUFS, so well below. And if you go onto YouTube and you right click on a video, it'll come up with a box marked stats for nerds. And you can see how close to YouTube's target loudness a lot of videos are on there. And the surprising thing about that was I was getting so hung up on getting close to 0 dB, which is the equivalent of -14 LUFS. I was looking at some of the biggest tabletop role-playing, like actual play shows on YouTube, including Critical Role. And they frequently come in like almost 6 decibels under target loudness. Now, I'm not Matt Mercer, unfortunately, although we do occasionally swap hair care tips, right? If people are going to tune in numbers to watch him and their show is below target loudness, they're going to do it for us. So target loudness isn't a problem now. Now what I focus on is just making the audio sound clean. So that's basically the point. There is like, if you sound good, it is good. You can be too quiet, but really, it's not worth getting too hung up on.
The thing is, YouTube, if you come in under their target LUFS or over their target LUFS, they will actually adjust the volume of your video.
They'll bring it down, but they won't push it up.
Oh yeah, no, well, I mean, yeah, it's, I mean, they don't want to be, but yeah, that's it will be. So don't worry about it too much. But like, if you want to, the way you get more LUFS without messing up your audio is using what's called a brick wall limiter. Like, I don't know if every DAW has this. I would imagine probably Fairlight would, but yeah, they'll have like something like called a mastering limiter or something like that. And the idea is you can kind of just push up the level. It's a bit like it clips it, but it doesn't exactly. It sort of looks ahead for when the peaks are coming and then turns it down before they hit. So you don't end up clipping it, but you still get more volume.
Interesting detail on that I learned, because there is actually a preset for a brick wall limiter in Fairlight.
Oh, cool.
You can call those up. It's not actually a true brick wall limiter. It doesn't sort of look at the signal and go, stop. It sort of preemptively lowers you a little bit. So that is a weakness of DaVinci Resolve, certainly in the version that I'm using, which I think is a couple of versions behind. Okay. But if you know what you're doing, like the thing with like compression, the technique that I use with compression is I look for where uncompressed audio is peaking, and then set the threshold maybe 2 decibels below that. Then put a limiter on it. I think I've been setting the limiter to -1 dB, just so that I can get as much juice without clipping as I can, and that tends to do the same sort of job.
Yeah, no, I know where. I mean, the thing is, I would say though, is I normally put the limiter like very last thing in my signal chain. So I'll have my voiceover. I might put a limiter on that just to keep it under control, but I usually won't. I'll then like mix it, put it together with background music and whatnot, and then I'll have limiters the last thing in the chain. I'll just have it snipping off just the top 1 or 2 decibels, just enough to kind of like give it a little bit of a boost. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what limiter to recommend, to be honest. I don't know. Is the built-in limiter in Reaper any good? Relimit, I think it's called. I've not actually tried it.
I've found that I did have an issue using the limiter in Reaper. I mean,
not tried it, but yeah, I'll maybe give it a go.
It introduces quite a bit of hiss, I found, so it's not my go-to. But I mean, the tools that are in Fairlight are great, so long as you understand the limitations of them and how 1 or 2 of them don't quite work exactly as they're supposed to. I think, like Matt was saying, some of the vocal tools in Fairlight are a little bit janky, but they will get you there. They're certainly good enough.
That's just it. Like we've been saying, it's not about the tools you use, it's how you use them. I mean, you will be able to get there with whatever tools you have. It's just it might take you more steps. You know, that's the thing. I mean, you're going to have the same stuff no matter what you're using. Just plus. But the thing is, there are also free plugins you can add. Like I was talking about TDR Nova. That'll plug into anything you like. You know, like it'll run in Premiere, probably Resolve, certainly in Reaper and Audacity and everything. But yeah, it's you don't need to spend much money. But all right, okay, cool. Like there's another topic that I personally have a lot of trouble with. Like I think my videos are terrible for this, and that's background music. I've struggled with this for quite some time, and I think this is something I'd really like to discuss. Like I tend to, because of my background in audio, like music, I tend to mix my like music, basically like a rap song, you know, like a hip hop, because I usually have hip hop in the background just because it's designed to have sort of exact spoken word content over it. So I think it just kind of fits. But, I don't know. I just think my arrangement of it, I think I should probably have more silent bits and, you know, like not have it running all the time like I do. It's something I really struggle with. So, yeah, what do we think about music in background? Anybody want to jump in?
Matt, go for this, because he's the man to talk about this one.
Excellent, yeah.
No, I started with just background music, right, and a little bit of like, you know, the room sounds, table sounds, right, things that you're doing there, and the way that I edit video is I just the very first thing that I do is just start filming. filming me doing something, right? Part of a project. And I get hours and hours and hours of footage. And then I build the narrative, right? I take all of my content, I cut it down to like the salient bits about like what I feel is kind of good, you know, kind of content. And then I go to the music. And music for me is when I first started, it was like, well, I want to have music in my video that I like to listen to. Right. And so that was a lot of kind of electronic. It was a lot of, you know, and I got a ton of backlash. I got a ton of comments. People were like, love the video, shit music. Right. And part of me was just like,
you were also getting comments saying, love the music as well at the same time. Maybe not and shit video,
but not, yeah, exactly. But yeah, shit video, love the music. No, I did get some comments about good music, but it was mostly on the bad side. And I started thinking about it because I never wanted to put music in a video that didn't resonate with people, but I never wanted to put music in a video that didn't resonate with me either. So as I kind of grew into kind of what I'm doing today, my shots and what I do is a lot more cinematic. So I was like, what about cinematic music? Because for me, like if you think about it, well, at least in my head, people who watch movies, right? Like you rarely, you hear people comment on great soundtracks, but you rarely hear people going like, look, that cinematic music was just terrible. And so to me, it's like, you know what, maybe kind of a cinematic, kind of like approachable thing, it would be better for a more broad audience. Because what I do is I take all the shots that I have, I plug in the music, and then I edit it to go along with the music. Right. I make sure to break at the right points. I make sure to figure out, and I'm actually honestly remixing the music sometimes to take in fades that are longer and bring them closer, or to kind of have a couple of bars that I really like. I'll repeat those a few times if I need to stretch the video.
Oh yeah, I'm always like extending music by a couple of bars just because it doesn't finish at the right point. Yeah, I do it all the time. Yeah,
but I like how to mix it into the next one and where to leave blank space in the audio. It's something that it's honestly probably something that I spend the most time on, other than the shooting. Right. In my editing process, it's really getting the music right, because I didn't used to do VO. Now I've started to do VO, which to me is a lot easier than the music, but that's been a pain point.
What about you, Lee? You actually you actually showed a trick in the video that you posted about like notching out certain frequencies in the music to kind of make it stand out.
Yeah, scoop the mids. That's actually that's it. Johan from the Basement channel told me about that in the Big Red Arrow Club. And it's basically, you can, I'd still drop the music track down about 9 or 10 decibels anyway, because if you leave it, you know, at that normal level, it just overpowers everything. But then in the EQ, I'll take the, I'll scoop the mids out, just drop down around the 1K, with a nice, you know, shallow curve, not too much. And it just allows your voice to actually rise above the music. Yeah. But music is one of those things that is on so many different levels is tricky. And I find it one of my favorite things to do, and also one of my least favorite things to do, because I absolutely hate with a passion having to look for new music to put in to videos, especially when you hear the same music that you've just used in your latest video in somebody else's latest video. So, oh my God,
that drives me nuts.
But the thing is, getting it right does make a video work so much better. And some of my favorite things I've done, which isn't something I do so much anymore, partly because I don't like having to put together the music in these bits. But if I do have something like a soldering montage, where I have lots of different clips where I'm jumping from this is being soldered, and I try and keep it to very short bursts of video that are usually sped up as well at the same time. So it's nothing that I don't try and give the viewer a chance to walk away. But I try to do the cuts to the beat just so that it's a bit more engaging. So I really like doing that. But my my favorite tool against this is to just keep talking. If I can just be talking through the whole video, I won't have any music. So quite a few of my my videos just have zero music because I'm able to sustain the story throughout the whole thing. And I've found that when I have a track in there, a section in there where there's some music holding up the the action, that's when the retention graph in YouTube slopes down. Nobody watches those bits, so I've ended up they're out the door. I don't put them in anymore or as much. But sometimes you have to pad.
I've actually because of that specifically. I've actually in my next new video, because I've got a follow up to one. But in my next new video, I'm only going to do intro and outro music. I'm going to try that. And then just kind of talk the way through it, because I've tried both, right? Having like a score and then ducking, which is a horrific exercise.
Yeah, that's another whole point, isn't it? Ducking, yeah.
But I'm trying. I'm literally in my next video. I think Clint LGR, right? He has a few types of songs that he does that are like kind of his brand, right? When the video opens, right? He goes, jazz, he cycles through some. Yeah, it's always some kind of smooth jazz. It sets the tone.
Really appreciate
and so that's kind of the way I'm thinking of moving forward, because to lead to your point, finding new music is horrible, because a lot of times I have 5 or 6 songs in each video. Like, I'm going to run out of stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, the libraries out there are getting bigger and bigger, which is fantastic. But, you're going to run out of stuff pretty quick.
Good point, actually. Can I just say that, as a warning to anybody out there that's watching this and picking up hints, I hope there are some people doing that. Otherwise, this is a big old fat waste of time. If you are going down this road of looking for music on the internet to put in your videos, pretty much 99% of the sites out there that say this is a free free music track that you can use in your videos, it's not. You're just going to put that on your YouTube video, and then they're going to sting you after. It happens all the time. Just steer clear of them. The YouTube music library is something that everybody uses, so you're going to get a lot of repeating tracks, but you're completely safe, and that's pretty much all I'll use, except one of my best and oldest friends recently just gave me a track that he'd made. He's a bassist and he's a multi-instrumentalist, and he just made me a lovely track which he called The Finangling Nerd. I think that's in honor of me. And that was just lovely. That was brilliant. Although I did get one complaint about that being too bassy, but he's a bassist. I mean, what am I going to do? I can't dip his bit down.
Yeah. So it's like Vsauce has got his kind of signature music that his mate made. So it's the same thing for you. Like in terms of rights, I actually just pay for Epidemic Sound. It's not too expensive, and like they actually have some good stuff on there. Like because I'm to be honest, like one of my favorite bits is looking for new music, because I was a DJ for 15 years, so looking for new music is just like second nature to me. And it was hip hop I played as well, so it's one of the reasons why I've always got hip hop going on in the background. But I think it was
how much. Can I ask how much that is?
Epidemics. I don't know what it is now. I think they put it up again recently. I'm not 100% sure. But the thing is, you don't have to keep. I don't know. It's like 20 quid a month or something. But you don't have to keep the subscription going. Like if you make a video with it and then want to cancel the subscription, you don't have to then take the video down or anything. Like you've got a license to use that music for as long as you have it. So it's and
I use that strategically, because I only put out a video maybe once every 3 months, and so I only pay for Epidemic Sound like a third of the year, right? Because I pay for it, go find it, use it, cancel, and then 2 months go by where I don't need it, and then I need it again. Hopefully, if I turn out more videos, I'll be doing that. But I've also reached out to other YouTubers that are artists and been like, hey, like I'd love to use your new track in my video, and I always get really, really positive responses to that too. Yeah.
We've got our very own Momentum in the Big Red Arrow Club.
That's right.
He's got some really nice music. I've used it. Quite a few of us have used these tracks in our videos. So that's
cross promotion.
Another. And I think I've always wondered this. there are quite a few people out there. One person I really need to say this to is Banjo Guy Ollie. What would you charge, Ollie, to let us use your music? So maybe if he ever watches this, I might point him to this part of the video because he's probably not going to watch the rest.
Offer him a cut of the advertising revenue, maybe. Like it'd be probably not a great deal. Yeah, exactly. So you're going to be disappointed.
Unfortunately,
sorry, we've not heard from HDE about music, have we?
The thing is, like the whole conversation about music, like for what Doom Colonist is about, it's a bit more involved. It's not as simple a proposition as like you go and find appropriate background music and just paste that underneath.
Yeah, it's used as a storytelling device kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there are like some of the best actual play channels, like the Glass Cannon Network, who are really good fun to watch. They will quite often employ backing music in a sort of like a canned fashion, and like it works. It's fine. The thing I don't like about that is that you will get these long ambient tracks, and you can buy ambient tracks that go on for like 40 minutes, 60 minutes, but then they get to a point where they end, and you have like a conspicuous gap. So what we do is we don't so much, or the decision I made as the guy running the show is that we're not using background music so much. We use ambient sound. And there's a lot of work goes into that because that has to be assembled and created. And even though it's made out of a lot of royalty-free sounds and things, sometimes things I've recorded myself, you still have to be a little bit careful because there are unscrupulous entities out there that will copyright claim sound effects.
This has happened to me. Yeah. Like my old band, like from about 10 years ago, I was in a hip hop group. Even though we used no samples or anything like that, Warner Brothers just claimed one of our tracks. Yeah. And, there was nothing we could do about it. It didn't even sound like any of them. It's just at the time, Warner Brothers had the right to just take down any track they wanted, and there was all you could do about it.
The most absurd thing that I've ever heard of was there was a case of some girl who was streaming on Twitch, and she was playing some JRPG game. And it got to a point where there was a thing where she had to input commands. And each time she's doing it, as you input the commands, you get a little electronic sound. And she was doing this to solve the puzzle. And her stream, I think her stream got taken offline while she was on air. And she was like, what? And
dear.
Twitch's content ID, or the equivalent of the content ID system that they have on YouTube, it had flagged that, saying it was identical to some hip-hop tune. And I was like, what? This stuff's gone crazy. But the trick that I use is basically anything that I'm feeling a little bit iffy about, I will pitch shift it just a little bit, just enough that it's like it's not going to be perceptible to most people. And I do that a lot more than you might think. There's even things like on our Alien streams, there were things like a lot of the iconic sounds from the Alien movies that you're obliged to use, like things like the motion tracker or the pouncing sound of the alien parasite, all that stuff. Those are all in there, but they're pitch shifted down and altered and whatnot. And even for the actual music that gets used on the show, there is a bit of a formula there. The format for that is that the streams have an intro tune, an outro tune, which a lot of people would say is YouTube suicide, but we're making a show.
I think
here.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Matt, I appreciate an auto-tune. Yeah,
Matt. I know that in the States there is with YouTube. I don't know if it's something that's open to many content creators so far, but they're going to have the ability to drop in commercial tracks, and then the creators of those tracks can then take a cut of your ad revenue.
Interesting.
Is this something? Have you not heard of this? Oh, this is something that's coming, and I'm desperate for them to do it, because if that comes along, then the whole world opens up.
Yeah,
doesn't it kind of supposed to work that way anyway, or am I got that completely wrong?
No, if you put in a commercial track, then they get all of the ad revenue. Not a cut.
Sorry, no, you're absolutely right. Oh, because they just get a cut after. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
That
would be cool. Yeah.
No, I haven't heard about that, but because I actually don't use the YouTube content library either, because usually the types of things that I'm looking for are more, because I've moved to kind of more kind of cinematic stuff, which is kind of hard to find other than through Epidemic Sound, which I use and love. But yeah, no, that's interesting. So if like I wanted to use like a Hans Zimmer track, I could drop it in and then still not have all of my ad revenue taken away for it. Is that the deal?
I think so, yeah.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, that's a really good idea if that's what they're planning.
It's not going to have, not every musician and, resource out there is going to be in the library, but it will be, they'll have access to quite a lot.
That's smart, because now I'm assuming that, they go out to all of the artists or the big kind of publishers, they pre-negotiate rates for whatever that is, and then they just make it available in the library. But yeah, that'd be interesting if you can just drop in a track that you've got from anywhere and it automatically in the back end kind of matches it up, and that'd be a pretty cool thing. Yeah.
Well, right now I'd be happy just to give away all of my ad revenue, just to be able to use the music that I want to use.
Right. Let's be honest.
Really that bothered.
How much do you make on ads? It's just,
exactly. Yeah.
No, I don't think, unless you've got like millions of views, then you ain't making much money off YouTube ad revenue. That's one of these things.
It always amuses me, and you get these guys in comment sections like, "This YouTuber's being greedy. Look at this money grabbing." I'm like, mate, you have no idea how little these people are earning.
It's possibly a discussion for another day, is sponsorships and that kind of thing. Be more than happy to talk about that some other time. But I think I've mostly made it through most of our topics, to be honest. We just kind of naturally came through them all, which is pretty good.
I have a final thought.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, anybody got some final thoughts?
Yeah, mine is that if you are getting into this and you're trying to make, every part of your process as good as you can make it, that's a noble thing to do. That's really good. You should always strive to be better. I would say, again, as I said at the start, don't try to be perfect to start with. And with audio, it is important. Audio is really important, because it's the thing that people will turn off more to bad audio than they will to bad video. If there's bad video, you can kind of forget that, because you don't even need to be looking at the screen half the time for a lot of YouTube.
Yeah.
But audio, if your audio is bad, then they're going to turn off. So you need to get it. You need to get it reasonably right. But don't be disheartened if you put all of the effort in and people complain, because people will just complain anyway.
Yeah,
it's just it's a natural thing. They're going to complain, no matter how good your audio is. You're going to piss someone off. So just make it as good as you can. And the most important thing to do is just to make the next one and keep making videos and keep doing what you love, because perfect is definitely the enemy of good. That's one thing that I've always stood by.
100%.
Don't try and make it perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's very, very wise words. Absolutely. The most important thing you can do is, as long as people can hear what you're saying, then that's good enough. Work on like making it sound nice, work on making your voice sound good. But as long as people can hear what you're saying, that's the bare minimum. That's all you really need. And that's good enough for most people.
Yeah.
I mean, just to, not to contradict anything that Lee has said, but just by way of a counterpoint, I would say as well, something that I come up against quite often when I'm talking to other people, and I'm talking about people who have no skin in the game here, people who are not content creators. Quite often, people will say, like, "Why do you spend so much time learning this audio stuff? Why are you so worried about this? Surely it's good enough." If anyone out there is listening to this and thinking, "Yeah, I'm going to have a go at YouTube," or like, "Yeah, I've got thoughts about how to do all this," it's very easy to minimize the importance of quality audio. But what Lee says is absolutely correct. Nothing will kill a video, and nothing will kill your engagement faster than running a tabletop RPG show. I mean, then having bad audio. It's absolutely true. You don't have to be amazing right out of the gate. there is a threshold you can say that you've reached where your audio is good enough. So long as it does not sound horrible, then you're doing something right. But be prepared that it's something that you need to continue to work on and continue to improve at. And there is a standard that you should be aiming for, which is, in my opinion, and it's only my opinion, that standard should be broadcast level audio. And there's no timetable for getting there. So long as you develop an audience, so long as you're enjoying what you do and your audience are appreciative of what you do, that is success. Everything else is just gravy.
Yeah. More wise words. Excellent. Any last thought, Matt?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of take the same philosophy as pretty much everything, because when I started doing, YouTube videos, everything was new to me. Right. I started on my, shooting things on my iPhone. I didn't have any dedicated mics. And one of the things I found is that you can go down a rabbit hole on anything. You can go down on your lenses, right? Just people that go nuts just on the lenses of your camera, not even the camera, just the lenses of the camera, right? The lighting, the audio, all of it. And one of the things I found is you can produce really, really solid videos without going down rabbit holes if you just kind of pay attention to some certain things. And so what I would hope that everybody would agree here, but what I would hope is that I think the message that I would want to communicate is, if you're thinking about it, right, the bare minimum for audio is to actually just don't leave it as the default, right? Like, just pay somewhat attention to it, even if you don't want to dive into the details or things like that yet, right? Because there's a lot of rabbit holes to go down, right? There's probably some basic things that you should be thinking about, so it's good enough in order for you to continue on to making things better. And then because if everybody tries to go down all the rabbit holes at once, like, that you're going to spend thousands on equipment, you're going to sink in hours, and quite honestly, your content is going to suffer, right? Because that's what we should be focusing on. But yeah, so I would say that, like, audio is, for me, is something that I know that I need to get better at. I think I'm not terrible.
No, your videos sound absolutely fine. Yeah, it's no problem.
Appreciate it. But no, there's things like this is a subject which I've made a conscious decision to be like, okay, now I want to know more about this, right? And I think that's probably a very healthy way to approach it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I think that was a very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much, the three of you, for joining me. I think I've had a very pleasant evening talking to you guys. I would say there'll probably be some links in the video description, just a link to some of the things we've been talking about. And I imagine people will be hanging around in the comments to kind of answer any further questions. So, I think, thanks very much for joining me, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Oh, thank you, Andy. It's been fun.
Thank you.
Andy?
Yeah.
You're fired.
Whew, harsh.
Hi, it's Andy again. Just as a quick addendum, I thought I'd show how I mixed this episode, because I'd never really mixed a podcast before, so I thought it might be interesting to look at the process that worked for me. Now, my approach is by no means the easiest way to mix a podcast, and you can get as good, if not better, results in far fewer steps using purpose-built voiceover processing software. So if this all seems a bit complicated, then be aware there are easier options. For example, there exists EQ software that can automatically match one person's mic to sound like another one, and there's voice leveling software that can even out volume changes, so you might not need to use a compressor. But I'm going to take a more traditional approach, using basic freely available tools so that you can see how the whole process works if you want to do everything manually. Anyway, the first thing to talk about is the actual audio that we're working with. We're all using Google Chrome and Riverside, which together do a lot of pre-processing to the signal. This is fine for video conferencing, but not ideal for a podcast. In fact, it seems to have mangled Lee's audio a bit, so in future I'd recommend disabling noise reduction in Riverside and installing a Chrome plugin that HDE recommended to disable its automatic volume control. The first thing I put on each person's channel was a gate, which simply cuts off the audio if it gets quieter than a certain threshold. This is mostly because of some hiss on Lee's channel, ironically I think caused by Riverside's noise reduction filter. It can't hurt to apply it to everyone else's channel too, but be very careful to set the threshold, pre-open and hold times very generously so it doesn't cut anybody's voice off when it shouldn't. Then it's the most important thing, EQ. I'm using the free TDR Nova EQ, but any parametric EQ will work just fine. I started with Matt's audio because personally I think his already sounded close to perfect. To act as a reference, I loaded a couple of samples of other YouTubers that I think have good audio and just kept flicking back and forward between Matt's audio and the references until I had them sounding in the same ballpark. As I said, I didn't need to do much, just a couple of little cuts in the low-mid region to get rid of some boominess, and I also added a high-pass filter just to make sure there wasn't any noise down there, although I think that Riverside's noise filter already did that. Then, once I had Matt's audio roughly matching my references, I EQ'd everyone else to match Matt, by just flicking back and forward between them and using trial and error. I found I had to cut my own mic a fair bit around 300 to 400 Hz and give a tiny boost on the top end. HDE needed a cut around 700 Hz and another one up at 10K, I guess because his mic has a bit more treble than ours. And Lee required a cut around 1K and a massive boost up at 5K and above. Again, I think this might be because of Riverside's noise reduction. Next thing is compression. I'm using the freely available Recomp, but most compressors will have equivalent settings. And this might be overkill, but I actually used 2 compressors on each channel. I've set one to be a slow compressor that's used to catch the long-term differences in volume caused by people moving closer and further away from the mic and stuff like that. The way you do this is by setting the RMS size pretty high like I've done here. I've also got the pre-comp set high, which means it looks ahead at any loud bits and turns the volume down long before they hit, which is important for making things sound as natural as possible. You want to adjust the threshold so it's just chopping a maximum of maybe like 3 to 6 decibels off the loudest parts. The next compressor is set to be a fast compressor, which is more about making sure people don't get quieter at the end of individual words and syllables, which I'm certainly guilty of. So I've turned the RMS size completely down to 0 and given it a pre-comp of only around a millisecond. We probably want to turn the threshold down a bit more than the previous compressor to catch the loudest parts of each sentence while leaving the quieter parts untouched. And another thing I like to do is bring up the dry fader to allow a little bit of the unprocessed voice through. This lets us keep more of the natural sound of the voice and stop it sounding too compressed. At this point we're nearly done, but just to make sure it's worth flicking back and forward between different speakers and making little adjustments to the EQ and volume levels of each person until everyone is about the same volume. Now with everyone set up, I added another compressor to the master output bus. This is mainly just to catch the moments where more than one person is speaking. It needs to be a fairly quick compressor, so I haven't set much RMS, and I also bumped the ratio up a bit higher because it'll need to turn it down quite a lot. Then I set the threshold to only really kick in when it gets loud, and that helps a lot with the overall level. Final thing to do is add a limiter, which allows you to make the audio as loud as you like without clipping. Find a loud bit in the recording, then bring the threshold down until it's just occasionally snipping a decibel or 2 off. I ended up almost exactly at YouTube's -14 LUFS target entirely by accident, so go me, I guess. And that's basically it. It's not perhaps the best audio mix in the world, but I think everyone's about the same volume and reasonably clearly audible, so I'm going to call that a win. I'll give you links to all the software I used in the video description, and by all means comment if you have any questions or just want to tell me my mix sucks. Thanks again for watching, and to the Big Red Arrow for letting me host this episode, and we'll catch you for the next one. Bye bye.